This is the 2021 iPad Pro 11-inch 512GB with the M1 chip. And as much as I love the iPads and I love this device, you and we really need to talk about it. What's up? Welcome back to the channel. Over the last few days, I've been using this little guy over here, which is the M1 iPad Pro 11-inch. Now, I went for the 11-inch over the 12.9, even though the 12.9 has fantastic new display tech on it, because the 11-inch is just the right size for an iPad. To be completely honest, the 12.9 is great and it's equally powerful, but it just moves into the territory of being a laptop and the size is just a little too big for me. You guys know portability for me is absolutely everything, and that's exactly why I chose the 11-inch over the 12.9. Now, this is the 512GB storage variant. It's the 11-inch Wi-Fi model. Overall, it's a great little tablet. It has a large amount of power on the inside, and it's so cool that this tablet now has the M1 chip on the inside. And the 11-inch on the overall also has the same amount of performance and power as the 12.9-inch with, and that's exactly why I chose this, because as you guys already know, I have an M1 MacBook Pro, which is a 13-inch laptop, and the 12.9-inch comes really close to that in size. So the 11-inch is the perfect pair for this laptop. Okay, let's quickly talk about configurations that you get on the iPad Pros. You get them in two sizes, 11-inch, 12.9-inch. You have various storage options going from 128GB all the way up to 2 terabytes now. The 1 terabyte and the 2 terabyte, which are the higher storage variant options, come with 16 gigs of RAM, and the lower storage variants from the 512GB that I have here going all the way down to 128GB come with 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now, as you guys can see, the design is pretty much the same. It's been the same since 2018. Nothing has changed on it. It's the exact same thickness, exact same dimensions. The screen on the 11-inch is also identical to what it was before. Of course, the 12.9-inch has a slightly tweaked design with respect to having a better screen, having better display tech on it, which is now mini LED. But again, that's only available on the 12.9, and that is a sacrifice you're going to have to make with respect to size if you want that better display. Perfectly honest with you guys, the iPad Pro is fast. It's insanely fast. This thing is a complete beast. We all know how powerful the M1 chip is, and it's got all that power packed in. You can edit up to 8K of multi-stream video on this iPad Pro. Now, I don't do that, but you can if you want to, because the M1 chip is that capable. You know what they say with power, right? With great power comes great responsibility. Somehow with the iPad Pro, I think this doesn't apply. The iPad Pro literally has no responsibility on it with all that power. Let's talk about this. So you guys already know I had the 2020 iPad Pro, which I used for a very long time. It had a large amount of power, and I also replaced my Intel MacBook Pro with that iPad Pro until I got my hands on the new M1 MacBook Pro, and it's great. It really worked. Now, that iPad came with the A12Z chip, and the 2018 iPad Pro came with the A12X chip, which was insanely fast. Like, both those chips, even today in 2020, are overkill. 90% of the people on the market were not even maxing out the chips on those iPads. The M1 chip, on the other hand, is so much power on an iPad. It's pretty much overkill, and it seems kind of pointless at this point, because nobody I know, and I literally say this, nobody I know is going to be maxing out the M1 chip on an iPad Pro. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not against the power. I'm not against good hardware. I obviously support better hardware and future-proof hardware, and I love it. I think more power and great hardware is amazing, but a product is only as good as its hardware plus its software, and when you put the two together, that's when you have a final finished product. With respect to hardware, the iPad Pro is fantastic. It's a complete beast. But with respect to software, it's running iPad OS, which is great for a regular iPad or the iPad mini or the iPad Air, which don't cost $1,000 and don't cost ₹1,00,000 in India. But these iPads are the iPad Pro, made for the pros. They have an M1 chip on the inside of them, and the M1 chip is the chip that literally eats through heavy desktop-based operating systems such as macOS, Windows. They can run practically any operating system and eat through them. They're super powerful. Those operating systems also come with professional apps such as Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro, Adobe Premiere Pro, DaVinci Resolve, a whole bunch of creative and productivity-based software that are only available on those operating systems. So we have all that power of that M1 chip on this tiny iPad, which runs iPad OS, which basically doesn't have any of that Pro software. So with all this power, where are you actually going to use it? Why I pretty much say that the M1 chip inside of an iPad right now at this point in time seems like an aimless, pointless move. The M1 chip is pretty much lost, because the A12Z chip on last year's iPad Pro was already good enough for me, and I think It just did everything I required it to do. So you couldn't max out last year's chips, and you're not going to be able to max out the M1 chip if you're continuously going to run iPad OS on it. The WWDC, which is Apple's developer conference, their software-based conference, is just about a week away at this point, and there are a lot of rumors. There are rumors about iPad OS this year. Everyone's hoping for major changes when it comes to iPad OS. With respect to getting professional apps is what everyone is expecting and wants in this event, and hopefully we're going to get that, but we're not really sure yet. Furthermore, I also hope that they improve iPad OS on a lot of other fronts. I hope they improve the multitasking abilities. Now we do have multitasking on iPad since iPad OS 30, where you have split screen view as well as slide over view, but you can only open 3 different applications at once. It's not good enough to be a complete productivity powerhouse. As nice as it may be, it's not ideal. It's not as easy, and it's not as simple as having a bunch of windows open on your screen like you have on a computer. What I'm really trying to say is it's not bad. It's definitely improved over time. There have been improvements with every software update. It's getting better, but it's still not ideal enough to replace my MacBook Pro. And even if it is, I mean, I did it, I tried it, I shifted from a MacBook to an iPad, and it is a pretty worthy alternative to a laptop even today. It's possible, you can do it. I did it, and a lot of other people on the internet have done it as well. But that also means you have to change your entire workflow. Brings me to my next point, where you also have to change the professional apps that you use, because a lot of them don't exist on iPad OS. And that's fine if you're ready to make the workaround. I just wasn't, and that's exactly why I came back to Mac OS. But the more movement of files within the iPad, sharing your files, storing your files, moving them from a drive to another drive, it is better now. It's getting better, but it's still not as good as what you have on a Mac or on PC, as a matter of fact. So that's another thing that has to change, and I'm really hoping that it does. And all of this is going to come down at one place. That's WWDC, which is a week away right now. Now let's talk about real world usage. I've been using it for a couple of days now. It's fast. It's blazing fast. Photo editing, video editing, playing games, watching movies, content consumption, absolutely anything on this device is amazing. It doesn't drop apps in the background. The RAM management is super efficient. The power is amazing. It's super snappy on the overall. Plus, I'm a big fan of the design. It's a sandwich of metal and glass on 2 sides. It's really thin, super portable to carry around. I love it. The iPad is a great device. There are a couple of alternative apps available on the iPad that you can use, which, for example, LumaFusion for video editing, which is a fantastic video editor. And these apps come very close to being professional alternatives on the iPad to what you have on desktops, but they still do lack certain features that I personally need, and that's exactly why I'm not being able to dedicate the iPad Pro as my main computer, even though it has an M1 chip on the inside. Now that you have an M1 chip on the inside, the USB-C port is not only a USB-C port anymore, it's also Thunderbolt, which basically means you're going to get super fast data transfer when you connect an external hard drive to your iPad now using the USB-C port. It's going to be pretty much as good as what you have on a Mac, which is also Thunderbolt, so that's great. You can also power external displays at up to 6K. Apple has their own 6K display, and you can power that using Thunderbolt by connecting your iPad via a cable to that display, which is great. I don't really do that. I don't have that display, and I also think the display is crazy expensive, but you can do all of these things now. There are definitely improvements with this iPad. The iPad also has a bunch of different tricks up its sleeve. You have a better image signaling processor at the back. The LiDAR scanner is still there. The front camera on the iPad is a lot better than what it used to be. You have an AI-based selfie camera now, which is an ultra-wide camera, so it's really great. Front-facing selfie camera also tracks you, which basically means if you move out of frame, it's going to use artificial intelligence. This feature is known as center stage, and it's going to track your face and try and keep you right in the middle of the frame at all times. Overall, there are a few improvements which are noticeable for a certain set of people. Okay, I get it. Apple does not want to bring Mac OS down to an iPad with an M1 chip on it, and I also get the reason why they want to do that. They want the Mac to be the one place where you can customize, tweak, download, use, edit, do absolutely anything on. They want the Mac to be their main computer, and of course the Macs are selling like crazy with the M1 chips. So they made a whole dedicated operating system for the iPads, and they kept upgrading the hardware over time, and I understand what they're doing. They're basically trying to build an operating system ground up, trying to reinvent a computer in a way. They're trying to reinvent a new style of a computer. It's not a replacement for regular computers, it's an alternative for regular computers. The main fact that they're doing this means they have to redesign everything from scratch. iPad OS has improved. It's a higher version of iOS and a lower version of Mac OS, and it's still improving. It hasn't reached its final form yet. But the only issue behind it is that this is the 3rd generation of iPad Pro with hardware that's already overkill for its software and already overkill for 90% of the consumers out there. It's taking a bit too long. Apple really needs to speed things up. get that software up to speed really fast so that users can get a final product. A product that has great hardware, that's already future-proof, and amazing software and professional apps on it that can fuse together and truly give you an amazing new alternative computer experience. Saying all this brings me to another thought that I've heard floating around within the tech community for a very long time. You should never buy a piece of hardware that promises you amazing software in the future. You'd be happier with weaker hardware that has equivalent software available for it so that you can get maximum use out of it. Think about that. That's exactly why I said we need to talk about the iPad Pros today. I didn't call this a review, and I don't think this is a review either. You cannot review a piece of tech that's not ready. A piece of tech is only ready when you have great software and great hardware, or even mediocre software and mediocre hardware. It's ready when it's a product in its final form. I don't think the iPad is ready in its final form yet. At least not the Pro models. The iPad Air, the iPad Mini, the regular iPads, they're all ready. iPad OS for them, like I said, fantastic. It's a great operating system on those devices. Pros with the M1 chip, I think there's still time for that. I still think a part of the software is still missing. But jokes apart, should you buy the iPad Pro? Honestly, it pretty much depends where you're coming from. If you're somebody who doesn't have an iPad and you're definitely looking at the Pro models, of course, it's the best iPad in the market. It's powerful, it's blazing fast, it's got the maximum hardware, it's faster than at least 50% of the other computers in the market. It's a complete beast. You can photo edit, video edit, a bunch of stuff on it. It's a productivity powerhouse. It's also great for content consumption and gaming. It is truly amazing. It's a great device. It can also be a laptop alternative or a desktop alternative for you, provided you're ready to make the sacrifice of shifting over your entire workflow and also make a bigger sacrifice of letting go of professional apps that you may be using on desktop and shifting over to alternative, somewhat professional apps that you have on iPad OS. It's possible. It's great. So I'm going to have to say yes for this category of people. If you have the 2020 iPad Pro or the 2018 iPad Pro, honestly, wait for WWDC. Let's see what Apple does with iPad OS. Let's see if any professional apps come. Let's see if iPad OS gets even 10% better than what it already is, and that itself will be a big win. The hardware is better, but probably not going to be able to take advantage of it. And if you're on a 2020 or a 2018 iPad Pro, you probably won't even notice the differences to be that great, and the upgrades are going to seem really marginal for you. So wait till WWDC, let's see what Apple does with the software, and hopefully if they do bring improvements to iPad OS, maybe then you'll be able to see the differences, and maybe then you'll be able to unleash the M1 inside of this iPad. Last but not the least, there's a certain set of people who have already shifted away from their laptops and have moved primarily to working on an iPad Pro. Yes, I know there's a certain class of people in the market who are doing that. I know it's also possible, and I also know it's going to get better over time. It is a great alternative, no doubt. You guys, I think it's okay. It's a great upgrade. It does everything a little bit faster. The addition of Thunderbolt is going to make your life so much easier because your main data transfer is going to be on the iPad. You definitely want that speed. So yeah, it's a little better on a lot of fronts. There are a few marginal upgrades, and it's the best iPad in the market. And since this is your main computer, yeah, you should upgrade. Apple does oblige us with the software, and they do give us more updates at WWDC. They do bring professional apps. Win for you guys anyways. And that's basically my verdict as of this moment. You know what camp you're in, so you make your decision based on that. For me, I think the iPad Pro is a really special device. I have used it as my main computer in the past. I think it's really powerful, and I absolutely love it. I use it on a daily basis. I have included it in my workflow even alongside my Mac. I think it brings a lot of benefits to the table where I can just put my Mac on the side and use this tiny little slab of glass and metal and get through my day with it. It is great. I do love it, but I'm more excited to see what Apple actually does with all this power inside the iPad Pro, and I'm more excited to see whether Apple will actually unleash that M1 chip that they've put inside this iPad Pro in the near future, hopefully at WWDC. Don't worry, I'm going to have updates for you on that front. We're going to run through WWDC, also going to have a full-blown review post WWDC on the iPad Pro 2021 with the M1 chip. Thank you for watching. This is Nitin Chawla. See you next time. Peace.